Whenever I start out on a project, I have an idea. I make a rough sketch. I look at materials that maybe I have that I could use, and I generate a cut list. Now on this table, I've got a very rough idea about what I want to do, and I made a cut list for the basic structure of the table. I got some bolts that I'm going to use for levelers. A big part of a welding project, I've come to learn, is cutting up the material. I spend a good deal of time measuring, marking, and cutting my material. And so it's good to have a cut list. You pile up your parts, then you can start to assemble it. I knew on these legs that since this is going to be an outdoor table, I wanted to seal the legs up. I'm making the legs out of tubing, and since I'm going to have levelers on the bottom of the legs, I knew I needed to seal off the top so water wouldn't get down in them and just sit in there and rust like crazy. So I wanted you to know that I don't consider myself an expert on anything. I don't consider myself a welder or really a sewing machine mechanic or, any of that. I'm just a guy, and I create. I create some things that maybe I can use or maybe I think somebody else will enjoy. And I also create videos. So I'm a creator, but that's really as far as it goes. And so I'm not afraid to make mistakes. And sometimes I just consider things good enough. I like things to be good, but sometimes I just think that good enough is, well, good enough. And so as I've wrestled with perfection, it's really not very helpful. I'm learning. I just wanted you to know that, you can make stuff and you can do things that you want to do just because you want to, and they don't have to be perfect. Stuff doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough. And even if it's a complete failure as far as, maybe you're trying to make something to use and it won't work, well, heck, you learned and you did what you wanted to do, and that's enough. So I just wanted to leave you with that thought. So once I get the ideas out of my head and assembled, then I can start to take measurements and further flush out my ideas. So now I know what size the inside of that piece of metal is, and so I can cut out the top. Once I get the top in, I realize that it's, really not sturdy enough for my liking. So I just come up with some bracing. And so that is, how I got the idea. I put the top in, it wasn't sturdy enough, I made the bracing. I use these squares. These are really good. They'll hold things pretty good until you can get it tacked in place. Once you get it tacked in place, you can make longer welds and not pull your members out of square as much. After I got it built, I decided I wanted some bracing. So I made some 45-degree bracing that just looked good to my eye. I just kind of held stuff up and cut it when I liked what it looked like at that length. And so now the legs, I've sat on the table a couple times. It didn't seem sturdy enough again, so I'm making this bracing. And I'm using 90-degree bracing. And so I've kind of got to just flesh it out here. Prop some stuff on some angle iron where it will eventually live so that I can measure that centerpiece. And so I cut that centerpiece, and again, I'm just working these things out in real life. You know, people do it with SketchUp, and I respect that, and I admire it. And if you can do that and like to do that, that's a good way to do it. But this is how I do it. This is a coat of primer. I'm just kind of smoothing it out a little bit with some steel wool. I use compressed air a lot. This is a utility table that we can work on while we're outside. And it'll be sturdy enough to do a project on. It's at a height that's a good height to work on while standing.